Don't you tell me what to call the thing. You can't even remember what it's called.
It's so horrible. It's so horrible.
Oh my God. So my wife was asking me, "Oh, you're gonna do the thing? What did you say? Second reflections? No, not second reflections. Meditations? No, not meditations." Could not remember. She could not remember for the life of her what the series is called. Additional Thoughts. And then my son walks in. She asks him. Boom! Right away, he gets it. So we know who loves me more in the household between the two of them.
I might love you.
I think you love Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she loves Animal Crossing. Yeah. Anyway, Man on the Moon, Kid Cudi. I did listen to Man on the Moon 2. That might upset some of you. I know there were some of you that were really wanting to see a reaction to that, which is understandable. I ended up listening to it on my own over this week because it just felt appropriate, honestly. I was really on the fence about it. And then someone told me to watch the documentary called The Man Named Scott, which I did. And that documentary was incredible. Like, honestly, I found it to be pretty emotional. There were some times where I was like, honestly, I had a couple tears just because fucking intense. And because of that, and because of the way Man on the Moon 1 just kind of, it felt like it was on this theme of getting darker, and then instead of continuing down, it sort of washed out and ended on a high note with what was it, Up and Away. And someone told me that I guess Scott, he likes to end like that. He doesn't want to end on a negative note. He wants to end on a positive note, which makes sense. But I felt with how things were going in the first album, hearing the second album was important to continue that story. So I wanted to hear the rest of that story. Holy shit. Man, I guess I'll talk about that a little bit now since I'm on it. It was really dark. You know, in the documentary, there's that part where Shia LaBeouf is talking about his friendship with Scott. I just call him Scott now. And there's this one part where he's describing how when he makes music, he's just mining his heart, everything that's inside of his heart, and plopping it out and laying it out there. And it's absolutely true. In that second album, it seems that way. When you got tracks like "Don't Play This Song," that song is unbelievable. And to watch the documentary and hear the producer, the guy that was, or at least I think he was one of the producers, talking about how, yeah, I helped produce that song. I don't like that song. I never liked that song because it's like, honestly, and not to make light of it or make fun of it, but that song reminded me of that Rick and Morty episode where Rick uploads his mind into that teenager's body, and he's Tiny Rick, and he keeps playing those guitar songs where he's like, "Let me out. I'm dying. This isn't just a song. Please help," you know? And then everyone's like, "Yeah, Little Rick, great song." He's like, "Yeah." That's what that song was. I mean, he's just literally talking about all of these horrible, horrible ideas and spill them all out there. And oh God, what's the lyric? I can't remember right now. I write down the tracks, but then I don't write down the lyrics. I should start writing down the lyrics for these additional thoughts. But that song is fucking intense. And I can't imagine being in a recording studio with a guy who is putting these lyrics out into a song, and because to me it washes right up to that line of making deep, meaningful art and somebody literally crying for help. And you know, how do you balance that? Like, how do you go, okay, this is just a song, it's him expressing himself, you know, and all these different things, versus he's saying some pretty explicit, clear-cut things here, guys. I think he's got a problem. I think we should help him. But then how weird to be in a recording atmosphere and like kind of going along with it. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, this is one of the tracks for the album. I don't know. So that was wild. That was really wild. Watching the documentary, listening to the second album, and seeing his life just fall apart in music. I mean, I really don't think I have experienced an artist who has been that open throughout an entire album. You know, I've heard songs that are very open and personal and raw in that sense, but not through a whole album. incredible to me. And the other thing too with him talking about how so many people had reached out and said positive things about Man on the Moon 1 and how it saved their life and all these obviously positive, wonderful things. And I couldn't help but think about Kendrick Lamar and that track You, where he's just tearing himself apart for all the things he did not do. He didn't keep his teenage sister from getting pregnant. He couldn't do anything to prevent his three buddies from getting killed that summer when he was on tour, and just ripping himself apart. You ain't try. And I felt like there was a really strong parallel with Kid Cudi and what he was putting himself through in the responsibility that he was trying to carry in terms of reaching other people and helping other people. And in a way, it began to feel like an unfair burden for him, and it was just crushing him. And then you've got tracks like Mr. Rager, he's just clearly trying to deal with this with substance abuse of all kinds. He talks about he's doing cocaine and how he's ashamed because he's doing cocaine because he has an uncle who was on crack and all this other shit. And he's like, I'd never ever do that. And then he does it anyway. I mean, pretty wild. And I'm glad that documentary exists. I'm glad these albums exist, but it does go to show how difficult being a famous musical artist is. I mean, obviously, some people manage it better than others, and I'm glad that Kid Cudi survived, and now he's kind of on the other side. And at the end of the documentary, he's talking about how I'm not going to make any more dark albums, and I'm just not going to do that anymore. But man, I'm kind of surprised he made it. It seemed like it was just getting so deep and so dark that he was going to commit suicide. He talks about that in the documentary, how he had suicidal thoughts and then he had to check himself into rehab and all this shit. I mean, fuck, man. Just crazy. And in that experience, I kind of realized, this is something that people have left comments on. You need to learn more about the artist. You need to have more context going into it so you can understand the music better. And I agree with that. However, I also feel like I have a better process going forward. I will still go into albums completely blind because I love doing that. I love having music stand for itself. But now that I have a little bit more, I'm giving myself more freedom with listening to live shows and watching music videos instead of saving all that stuff for reactions. Now I'm having a lot more fun digging into the artist and who they are and what their life was like, and understanding their music more, because I think that is important. And really, Kid Cudi has really shown that there's a flaw in my idea in that I want to keep music and artists separate, because I just want to listen to their music and what that stands for. But you really can't do that without having the person that created it. You can't, it comes from them. And so everything that's happening in their lives, all the context of their lives, transfers into the music. And so if you don't understand that, and if you ignore it like I do, if you just try and listen to only the music, there's a lot of stuff you miss. So I'm happy to learn that I've been wrong in how I listen to music and approach artists and their private lives, because I like to respect the privacy of their lives. But there you go. Sometimes it just makes everything that they've made so much better knowing where it came from. So there's kind of all that. I mean, that's Man on the Moon 2, really, right? And the documentary. Now, the album, Man on the Moon 1, I had a great experience with that this week. Even though I was listening to both, I was bouncing around between the both. Man on the Moon 1 had that great experience where, okay, I like this song. So, first of all, I really enjoyed Solo Dolo. I think that's still my favorite one off the album. I love the tone, and it's just a little bit darker and a little bit slow. I like that one a lot. But then, I really enjoyed Cudi's Zone. I was like, yeah, this is a cool one. And then Make Her Say. I think that's my favorite song that has a very heavy use of a sample so far. Initially, I was kind of into it, but as I listened to it, man, I just got fucking hooked. I got hooked on that jam. And I really like the way that, I don't know if Lady Gaga came in and recorded that sequence especially for the song, or if it's a sample or what they did, but I did manage to find on YouTube there's a live version where the two of them are playing together on stage. The audio quality was terrible because it was from like somebody's phone or something like that. So you couldn't really hear it and enjoy it. But it was just cool to see her playing the piano and singing that bit and him doing his bit. That was great. But then, I really started to like Alive. Like, that's a great jam. And then I was like, oh no, Simple As is kind of hooking on me. And Day and Night is hooking on me. And then Pursuit of Happiness started hooking on me. Like every song started to grow and kind of like edge each other out for not necessarily first place, but just really enjoying them. And it's fun when an album does that. It's really cool when you go through and you listen and something new pops up each time, because then it's like every listen is a new experience in a way. So that was a lot of fun. Intergalactic was another great one. My World was another great one. Like, just fucking, the people that have said there's no skips on this album, I agree. There's no skips on this album. It's really good, top to bottom. And I enjoyed the shit out of it. And because of that, and because 2 has such a departure, I'm in a way, I'm kind of glad I did not react to 2, at least not like back to back, because it kind of threw me off. 2 was a little bit more of my standard experience, where on the first listen through, I was like, yeah, this is okay. There's a couple songs that jumped out that I enjoyed. So what was it? These Worries. That was the one. That one jumped out at me first thing. I like that one a lot. And Mr. Rager 2 was pretty good. But that one was a little bit more of a standard album experience, where the first time I listened to it, you go, yeah, okay, that was kind of cool. And then the more I listen to it, the more I get into it, and the more I really enjoy it. Mojo So Dope is great. Erase Me I like. Wildin' Cause I'm Young I'm like. Mr. Rager, of course, These Worries, The End, All Along, Ghost. I really like the second half of 2 quite a bit. But the whole thing is fucking dark. It's dark. And it's such a departure from 1. And it's kind of crazy because it doesn't happen that much later after 1. So this shit happens fast, man. His life turned on a dime. And it was crazy too, the documentary talking about how Day and Night, he uploaded it to MySpace and it was on there for like 2 years before he got a deal. And it's just wild. Just fucking wild. Now, in terms of everybody saying, this album saved my life, Man on the Moon 1 saved my life, and Kid Cudi talking about, mental health issues and stuff like that. It did throw me off a bit in that I was expecting more of a lyrical experience. And when I was going through the lyrics on that first listen, I was kind of surprised that there wasn't more specific content lyrically in addressing mental health issues and stuff like that. I mean, he talks about it, but I had this preconception in my mind of, or I guess a preconceived notion, I don't know. Anyway, that it was going to be a little bit more lyrically intense, just because I had this idea of, it really addresses mental health issues. But it was cool to be wrong in the sense that somehow with that first album, he captured with the sound, just the feeling, that feeling of kind of head down and day by day and struggling and just trying to block out stuff, but just churning and churning and churning on the inside. Like that track, man, Soundtrack to My Life. It really, really, really captures the feel. And I feel like with Man on the Moon 1, that the experience I had with that one is what a lot of people have with Forest Hills Drive from J. Cole, that I did not have, just because I wasn't listening to that album at that point in my life, where other people are talking about high school and other things like that. This album, Man on the Moon 1, sonically, it was able to latch on to some of those feelings of just kind of trying to make it through and listening to somebody else struggle and deal with these things and not feeling alone and stuff like that. So Kid Cudi did a fantastic job, obviously, in capturing that feeling and addressing those thought processes and ideas and stuff like that. So really cool. Really cool. Let's see, what else do I have in my notes? That might be everything. Great album. Hands down. Oh, yeah. With the sound. A lot of you mentioned, this sound hadn't existed in hip hop before. And it was kind of funny because it just so happened like 2 or 3 days before, for whatever reason, I'd stumbled onto the Chemical Brothers again, which is a group from the 90s that was pretty big in electronic music. They're actually still around, and it made me realize, I used to listen to Chemical Brothers. I used to listen to Crystal Method, Aphex Twin, Future Sound of London, Delirium, like all these different electronic artists back then. And I think musically, the album didn't surprise me as much because I'm used to those kinds of sounds. But then when I stepped back and thought about it, I was like, oh, wow, for something like this to drop into hip hop, especially, this is where my lack of knowledge of hip hop history fails me but especially if you're coming into something that's, harsh and gritty and rough and stuff like that, it is a big departure in sound. So that was kind of cool to experience and think about that and have people be blown away by that. And I guess with 808s, which is Friday's album, that was another big piece of that puzzle in terms of sound. So there you go. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed both albums, 1 and 2, for completely different reasons. I mean, 2 really gets into the dark and the gritty. 1 is just somebody trying to process and deal with these feelings and get through it, and great music to help carry your soul, as it's trying to sink into all these just bad thoughts. I guess that's it. How's that? Oh yeah, Animal Crossing with the weird animals and the.
I still can't get rid of that one.
My wife has a character that she's trying to get leave because every time you talk to him, he sits down on the
All
toilet.
he does is sit on the toilet. That's it. You come in, say hi, he immediately goes and sits on the toilet.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Anyway, enjoyed it. Definitely a Kid Cudi fan. He seems like he's a really cool person too, man. He's pretty open. Obviously very open artistically. And Friday will be 808s and Heartbreak, just in time for Valentine's Day. I look forward to it. I know a lot of you guys look forward to it. So I see you then.